Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time, Masechet Sanhedrin. Today is our 7th class, and we are going to be reviewing Daf 44 through 50. And we were in the middle of discussing the story of Achan from the book of Yehoshua, from the book of Joshua. What happened is that Yehoshua tells the nation that they're going to war, but they are not allowed to take any of the spoils from the war. And Achan, it turns out, he does take the spoils of war, and he is punished. The Gemara seems to say that it's not only that he took the spoils of this war, but he took the spoils of other wars, that he also transgressed other things from the Torah, and he did terrible things. And Daf 44 tells us that Yoshua killed Achan's whole family, or no, he didn't kill them, but Achan was burned and then stoned, or no, his possessions were burned and he and his animals were stoned. If you remember, we are in the middle of discussing the stoning process, which we will discuss. We will continue to discuss. Back to Achan, he stole special garments, and because of this, 36 men died, or maybe one person died, but he was equal to 36. He was equal to 36 men. It seems that, right, Moshe spoke, the Gemara tells us that Moshe spoke softly to God, but Yoshua spoke strongly to God. Pinchas, right, the Kohen, Pinchas argues with God because of the story of Zimri, right? He has relations, and because of this, 24,000 people die in the desert. The Gemara tells us that Yoshua was a little bit at fault because he distanced certain stones and he didn't listen to God, or no, Yoshua always listened to God, or maybe Yoshua made the cherem and therefore Achan got in trouble. Right, meaning really the spoils were allowed to be taken, but Yoshua is the one who said that they should not be taken. The Gemara describes the story in the beginning of Sefer Yoshua, I think in Perek Bet, in the 2nd chapter, where Yoshua meets a man in the middle of the night, and it turns out that he is an angel. He tells him he is the general of God, and he tells Yoshua that he should, what is he doing out here? He should be learning Torah all night, and it's greater than bringing a sacrifice. Okay, hold on 1 second. Since we're talking about angels, the Gemara tells us that Gavriel, the angel, had 3 names, and you can he protects the Jewish people. And he was a very powerful angel. The Gemara tells us that you're supposed to pray or daven before you are in challenging times, right? We learn this from Abraham, who prayed in the place that later on the Jewish people would be, meaning Abraham actually davens there, and therefore when the Jewish people got there, they were actually saved because of Abraham's prayer from many years beforehand. The verse teaches us that Achan's confession was accepted, and he does go to the next world, to Olam Haba. We had mentioned last week that a person should confess before they are killed. We don't let a person say, I'm confessing for all my sins except for this one because really I'm innocent now. And we don't let them say that, even if it's true, because it casts aspersions on the court and on the witnesses. And therefore, they can think it in their hearts, but they don't say it out loud. If the witnesses that convicted this person who was found guilty, if later on they say, oh, we lied, we do not believe them and we do not overturn the verdict. But if they really did lie, then they are responsible for the death of an innocent person, and God will punish them in the way that He sees fit. Okay, we're continuing on to the next Mishnah, which describes a little bit more in detail how a person is stoned. Again, this is because he transgressed a certain punishment, a certain sin where the punishment is stoning. So the Mishnah tells us that 4 amot away from the place where he's going to get stoned, they actually take off his clothing. We're going to see in a minute that this is actually out of mercy. The idea is that clothing will pad the person, and it will make it harder for the person to die. And we want the death to be quick. I don't think the word is painless, but I think the point is as humane as possible. Of course, we are still talking about capital punishment, and because the death will be quicker if he doesn't have any clothing on, he takes off his clothing, and he then covers his genitals. For a woman, she covers also like in the front and the back. Another opinion is that a man is stoned naked, but a woman is stoned with her clothing on. And we'll explain now in the Gemara why that is. Daf 45 tells us that, the verse says you should stone him without his clothing. But because it says him, then we say, but for her, for a woman, you do it with clothing. And we see here that the woman, the Gemara discusses the concept of the ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You're supposed to love your fellow your fellow man, fellow person, just like you love yourself. And here, the Gemara says, even when you're going to kill someone, it should be done in the most humane possible. So now, for a man, because he, again, the Gemara presumes he doesn't mind taking off his clothing, he'd rather die quicker. For a woman, she'd rather have her clothing on so she's not embarrassed, and therefore she leaves on her clothing. The next Mishnah describes the area where the person is stoned. It's called the Beit Haskila, the house of stoning. It was double the height of a person, so it's like a scaffolding or some sort of tower where they would go up on top. One of the witnesses, again, remember there were at least two witnesses that testify to convict the person. One of those witnesses pushes the person off of this structure, and he falls on his side. If he dies, okay. If not, then the other witness throws a rock onto the person, and that is supposedly is going to kill him. And if it doesn't, then the people around, the people in the area who come, they are going to throw stones to make sure that the person died. So now the Gemara explains again, why do you push the person off of this high structure? Again, we want the person to die quickly. And therefore, this is the quickest way that he can die. Okay, this is learned from the verses about the Mount Sinai. It is said that during the time when the Jews received the Torah, they were not allowed to touch the mountain. And if you did, you would get stoned and thrown down. Therefore, the Gemara understands that stoning is throwing down. And therefore, you need both throwing down and throwing stones And that's how we get both of these ideas. There was a stone that was put on this platform that needed two people to pick it up. That's how big it was. And then the witness would throw it, right? So two people would pick it up, and then one of the witnesses would drop it on the person. It never had to be that the rest of the people needed to throw stones, because between these two things, the person would die right away. And anything, so now the Gemara tells us that anything that's used to kill the person is actually buried with the person, not in the actual grave, but within 4 amot, within the area of the grave. Now, we said that one of the witnesses has to push the person off. If one of the witnesses lost his hand after the verdict was reached, that person doesn't get, the convicted person does not get killed, because we need the witness to be able to be a part of the punishment. If he didn't have a hand in the first place, right, meaning before the case, so then that's fine. He could still be a witness, and the person can get killed. So from here, the Gemara is going to go into a lengthy conversation about, does it, when the verse says something specific, does it mean it has to be exactly in that way? And if you can't do it that way, it doesn't happen? Or it's a general understanding, right? If it says, and then the witness pushes him off, right, with his hand, does it mean that if he doesn't have a hand, he doesn't get killed? So here the Gemara says there's a machluket about how precise you have to be in accordance with the verse. So we have this in two different cases. One with a murderer, and one with a relative of someone who got killed, that he's allowed to go and kill the murderer. And here, because we have these two cases, now there's another general principle in the Talmud, which is that if you have two examples of something, we can't learn a general rule, right? You need to have more than two cases in order to extrapolate to more cases. So the Gemara explains, right, what is the case of a Goel Hadam? Goel Hadam is the relative of somebody who was killed. He has the right, and then the Gemara actually says it is a mitzvah, right? He's commanded to kill the murderer if, now again, what is the case? The person was killed accidentally, and we know that we'll learn more in this Masechet, but when a person kills accidentally, they have to run to the city of refuge, which is called an Ir Miklat. The city of refuge is a place that accidental murderers go to, and it's their sanctuary, meaning as long as they stay in that city, they are safe. But if they leave that city, a family member of the murdered, right, the victim, is allowed to kill the murderer. So it says, right, that he has to kill the murderer, and if there's no relative, the court actually appoints someone to kill him, because he's not he is not going to he's not allowed to leave the city of refuge. Now we have the case of Ben Sorer Umoreh. This is a child who rebels against his parents. If one of the parents is missing a hand, or is lame, or is mute, you cannot kill the child. Again, this is based on the verse, and you have to follow the verse precisely. The same thing with what's called an Ir Nidachat. Ir Nidachat is a city where the majority of the city is convinced to worship idolatry. And it says that you have to gather everyone in a public area and they get killed. So the Gemara says if there's no public area, like a town square, you can't, if there's no public area, that's where you burn all of their possessions. If there's no public area, you cannot burn everything, right? Therefore, it's not an ir nidachat. Or no, just because there's no town square doesn't mean that you can't do this. You make a town square and then you can burn it. As we said, it's a machloket if we follow the verse precisely or not. Okay, next Mishnah. Now that the person was killed, the body is hanged after the stoning, or maybe only a blasphemer and an idolater gets hanged, right? Hanged, right? You hung a picture, you hanged, I think, a person. Okay, so the person, here there's a machloket. Does everyone who gets stoned, do they get hanged? Or only person who blasphemes God or is an idolater? Or right here, there's a machloket also if a woman is hanged or not, and they are quickly. We'll see in a second. We'll get to the next Mishnah. The Gemara says that the verse says you kill the person, and hanging a person is hanged, right? You hang them, and this is right the principle of klal and prat, right? This principle means generalization and then a specification. When you have those two things, right? You kill the person and then you hang them. It means that anyone who curses anyone who curses is hanged, right? Not everyone who gets stoned gets hanged. Or do we use the principle in Hebrew? It's called ribui and miut. Ribui means I don't use the word generalization. Like something that's more inclusive to something that is more exclusive. And then it includes anyone who gets stoned is going to get hanged. Again, it says hang him, so maybe it's only a man that gets hanged, or no, maybe it's a man and a woman. Again, the child, the ben sorer. Oh, can you hear me? Yes? Oh, okay. Someone said that they lost me. Can you hear me now? Okay. Did you lose something? Or we're okay? Okay.
I missed the last 5 minutes. The last 5 minutes.
Did everyone miss the last 5 minutes? No, he's talking. Okay. Should I go back or did people hear? Nobody's. No?
I think you could continue. Hopefully I'll understand from the context.
Okay, fine. Okay. Okay. So now the Gemara on Daf 46 says that you cannot judge more than one capital case each court is not allowed to judge more than one capital case per day. The Mishnah had mentioned that Shimon ben Shetach hanged 80 witches in one day. We're going to learn the story later on, not today. So we say that you can't learn from that story that you can kill more than one person in one day, because this was a separate case, what was called a hora'at sha'ah. It was something that had to be done then and there. So we cannot learn from that case of the witches, but we'll talk about that another time. The Mishnah discusses, so we said that the person was killed. So now you have to build a gallows and you hang him by his hands, or right. So a gallows meaning you build like a T or something like vertical and horizontal. Another option is that you like lean a piece of wood against the wall and you hang the person like there in the middle. And the Mishnah tells us you undo the person right away, meaning you tie them up, you take them down, and you have to bury them exactly right away. And if the person hangs overnight, it is a desecration not only of the person, but also of God, what's called the Chilul Hashem. You are not allowed to do that. Right? When a person suffers, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, feels heavy, and therefore you cannot leave any corpse overnight without burial, which is why definitely here in Israel, they really try to bury a person the day that they die. However, if you're waiting for shrouds or a coffin to be made, so then it's okay to let the body wait overnight. After the person is taken down, they are buried in a special cemetery. They are not buried with their family. And the Mishnah says that there were actually two separate cemeteries, one for people who were beheaded and strangled. That's two of the capital punishments, and one for people who were stoned and burnt. Those are more severe punishments. Therefore, they had their own cemetery. When the body decomposes, you can bury the bones with the family. And after an execution, the family has to go to the judges and the witnesses, to say like, how are you, or Shabbat Shalom, or something like that, to show that there's no bad blood between the family and the judges. You do not mourn, you don't sit Shiva for a person who is executed, but you can have what's called aninut. Aninut is internal, private mourning, but anything that's public, you are not allowed to do. The Gemara explains that the person is first killed and then hanged. And how does this work? You delay judgment till late in the afternoon. Then the person is executed. You tie him up. You right away take him down, and then he is buried. Right? We say that every person is created in the image of God. Therefore, you do not leave the person hanging. You have to take him down right away. Right? The verse says that you need to bury the person on that day. The Persian king Shvur Malka asked Rabbi Chama, how do you know that you need to bury a person, that it's from the Torah? And he didn't answer him. And the Gemara says, why didn't he answer him? He could have told him the verse, or from the fact that all of our forefathers were buried, or that God buried Moshe. But maybe it's just a minhag, right? Maybe it's just a custom. It doesn't necessarily prove that it's a mitzvah from the Torah. There are prophecies that evil people won't be buried. That seems to prove that you need to bury all the other people. The Gemara says, no, maybe it's just a custom. Now, since we're talking about burial, the Gemara asks, do we bury a person so that the family won't be disgraced, or so that it could be an atonement for the deceased? Right? We know that we bury tzaddikim, righteous people. They don't need atonement. Or no, everybody needs atonement. How about a eulogy? When someone eulogizes a person who passes away, is it to honor the living relatives, right? You say, let me tell you something so special about your father, grandfather, great grandfather, or is it to honor the deceased, right? it's a big honor for the deceased that, many people speak about him at his funeral. So what is the practical application, right? Can a person say, you know what, I don't want you to eulogize me, right? So if it's for him, right, the person who's going to pass away, so then you can listen to him because he can decide. But if it's for the family, so then he can't take away that opportunity to give honor to the family, right? We know that Abraham eulogized Sarah, right? And they waited for him. That seems to be an honor for Sarah. And the Gemara says, no, it was also an honor for Abraham, right? Righteous people want other people to get honor through them. Right, Yirmiyahu, the prophet, told King Tzidkiyahu, you're going to die in peace, and they're going to eulogize you. Right, the Jews will get honor through you. Daf 47 tells us that Chizkiyahu dragged his father's bones on ropes, and this was like a disgrace, and as it was also a atonement for his father, right? His father was a terrible person, a terrible king. It shows that it's not about the living relatives, or maybe it was to honor all of Israel. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, right, the leader of the Jewish people, said, don't eulogize me in every small town, right? Just go to the big towns to eulogize me. And some say that it's a greater honor to the Jewish people if they only eulogize him in big cities. So we can't prove if it's for the living or for the deceased. Again, we said you can delay the burial for a casket or shroud. Is this for the honor of the deceased or for the honor of the family, right? Again, is it, right? It's a good omen for the deceased if he's punished after he dies, right? Let's say there's no eulogy, or he doesn't get buried, or it rains at the funeral. This seems to be saying it's all for the deceased. It's all about that person, and it's not about the living. Since we're talking about burial, we say that you should not bury an evil person next to a righteous person. And there's a story in Melachim Bet that they were going to bury this terrible person, and they happened to bury him in the same cave as Elisha the prophet, and he rolled and touched him, and then God made him come to life so that he wouldn't be buried next to Elisha, right? So basically, he lived long enough to leave that burial cave, and then he died somewhere else and was buried somewhere else. You also don't bury an extreme rasha next to a lesser rasha, meaning a lesser evil person next to an extremely evil person. Therefore, we have two separate cemeteries for the different types of capital punishment. Let's say a person ate something that was forbidden, and then he separated a sacrifice, and then he became an apostate, meaning he denied the existence of God, but then he returned. You cannot bring that korban, right? Once it is pushed away, it stays pushed away. This is the idea. Sorry. This is the idea of something being nidche. Nidche means pushed aside. If it's pushed aside once, you don't go back to it. Okay, we mentioned the concept of an ir nidachat. This is the city where everybody or most of the people worship idols. You burn everything, and if there are sacrifices in the city, meaning things that were set aside to be sacrifices, you cannot bring them to the temple because, again, they were owned by these evil people, and therefore they have to die as well. if a Kohen's relatives don't keep the mitzvot, they don't keep the commandments, so then he cannot become impure if they die, right? He cannot touch their bodies if they die. Or if a person is killed because they are uh, evil, right? A rasha, that's seen as a punishment, and it is an atonement for them. Maybe, right, only if the person is killed by a non-Jew is it atonement, but if the person is killed by the court, then no. So the Gemara says, here's the proof, right? They aren't, remember we said that the people who were convicted and killed by the court they were not buried with their family. This shows that there isn't atonement when they get killed. The Gemara says, no, you need them to be killed and buried, and then they get atonement. How do we know this? Because we said that right, and the body has to be buried and it needs to decompose, and then there's atonement, because we saw that after the body decomposes, the bones are allowed to be buried with the family. Okay. They used to take the dirt from the grave around Rav, and they used to use it to heal fever. And they say, it's just dirt, therefore you can have benefit from it, because we are going to learn that you are not allowed to have benefit from a grave or from idolatry. And therefore, if it was actually part of the grave, it wouldn't be okay. But if it was the dirt around it, so then you're allowed to use it. Let's say a person dug a grave for his father, but then he ended up burying his father somewhere else. You cannot bury the son, or maybe anyone, in that grave, right? It becomes forbidden for benefit. It seems like, right, again, the dirt is forbidden to be benefited from. We say, no, we're dealing with a structure that was built with stone, and that structure is forbidden to have benefit from it. Let's say you have a new grave, right? Someone just built dug a grave, but it wasn't for a specific person. So then you are allowed to bury whoever you want in it. But if a stillborn was buried there, it is asur, it is forbidden to get any benefit from there. Now the Gemara tells us that there are three types of graves. One that's found on the property, you're allowed to move it, and the place that it is pure now, and you are allowed to get benefit from that area. The second is what's called a known grave, where you can't move it, but if you do, the place is still impure, but you are allowed to get benefit from it. And the third one is a grave that is very public. A grave that is like in a public area, which is dangerous, right? In the middle of the road. You're allowed to move it. The place becomes pure, but you're not allowed to get any benefit from that area. So now the Gemara explains, and we've seen this before, the concept of a met mitzvah, right? Met mitzvah means a person dies and there's nobody there to bury them. They acquire the place that they're lying on. You are not allowed to move the body, but everyone's going to know about it. Therefore, it's not a found grave. That's something that people will hear about, right? Did you hear? They found a dead body on, this road. If you do move, if you wove shrouds for a deceased, then you're not allowed to get benefit from those shrouds because it's designated for the deceased. The Gemara, or another opinion is no, you are allowed to get benefit from it because it's not enough to just designate something. You actually have to use it in order for it to become forbidden. And now the Gemara discusses on Daf 48 this concept of what's called hazmana, right, which means designation, right? Is there power in the concept of designation, and it changes the status or not, right? So the Gemara says that like a scarf that a woman that a woman wears, if she designated it to cover a Sefer Torah, so now it cannot have it cannot, even if it is already impure, it becomes less impure, right? It changes its status. This proves that designation is enough, right? And the Gemara says, no, maybe it was already wrapped on the Torah. Let's say you have a pouch that was for tefillin, like a tefillin bag. So it cannot be used as a wallet, but that's only if it was already used for the tefillin. Right, again, the question is designation enough? Let's say you have a tomb, like a monument over a grave, and it was built when the person was alive. So you can get benefit from that structure. If the person died and you added rows of bricks, now it becomes forbidden for benefit. Again, maybe this is only because of designation. We say, no, he was already buried there, and that's why it becomes forbidden to benefit from. Let's say you carve a grave from stone for your father. Again, this is designation, but you buried him somewhere else. You can't use this grave, so that shows designation is enough. We say, no, maybe this is only because you want to give honor to the father. Or it's that he carved out the stones for the grave, not that he actually carved out the grave itself. We said that a new grave you can get benefit from. It shows that designation isn't enough. We say, no, it's only to teach that if a stillborn was buried in the grave, then it makes it forbidden. Let's say they collected money to bury someone, and then there was leftover money. You can use it for other deceased, but if it was designated for this one specific person, so then the money can go to the heirs. Or maybe the money was collected when he was already alive, and that's why it can go to the heirs. Or no, even after he died, it shows that designation is not enough, right? And therefore it can go to the family. Or no, you cannot use the extra money. You have to use it for the burial. And if you don't need it for the burial, so then you build like something above the grave, or you buy something nice for the grave, right? This shows that designation works. Or as we said, maybe designation is not enough. The Gemara gives a story of, unfortunately, right here, the Gemara gives a tragic story where a child dies and the parents are so distraught that they actually throw all of their possessions on top of the body in order to make them forbidden. Remember, we said anything that has to do with burial becomes forbidden. So they're like, they're so upset that they throw all of their clothing onto the body, and to make everything forbidden from getting benefit. So we say that people can actually take it off so that, and save the clothing, because we know that they don't really mean to do this. So it shows that, again, designation isn't binding. We say no, right? If the clothing touches the body, so then it becomes forbidden. And if not, so then it does not become forbidden. as we mentioned before, right? If you put tefillin in a regular pouch and then you take it out, meaning you didn't designate it as your tefillin bag, and then if you take it out, you can put money into it. Let's say you told the craftsman to make you a bag for the Torah or covering for a Torah or tefillin. You can then use it for mundane purposes if you didn't use it for the Torah. Again, this shows that designation is not enough. The Gemara says, or no, designation is something and you're not allowed to use it, right? And the halakha is, the law is that designation is not enough to make something forbidden. Okay, now the Gemara explains that if a person is killed by a Jewish king, all the possessions go to the king. And if the person is killed by a court, meaning the Jewish court, right, because of a capital punishment, so then all the possessions go to the family. We learn this from the story of King Achav, who took the vineyard of Navot, right? It shows that the king can take the property because he went against the king. And we say, no, maybe Achav was actually Navot's relative, and therefore he inherited it. Okay, we give another story of Yoav, who, Yoav was the general, and he was David's general, and Shlomo, King Solomon, wanted to kill Yoav. We'll see why. I'll tell you in a second. Right. So he wants to kill Yoav. Yoav runs to the temple and grabs on. And grabs onto the altar, to the Mizbeach, because he wants to get killed by the court, and he does not want to get killed by the king. And the Gemara says, why is that? Right? He wants to get killed by the court so that his possessions should go to his heirs, and therefore if the king would kill him, so then all the possessions would go to the king. The Gemara says, no, that's not the reason. The reason is that he just wanted to prolong his life. As long as he was holding on to the Mizbeach, the altar, they couldn't kill him, and he was just trying to prolong his life. But since we mentioned the story, we're going to go through the whole story. So Benayahu was sent by Shlomo, by King Solomon, to kill Yoav. And he has this very long conversation with him. And he says, right, in the end, he kills Yoav, and all the curses that David cursed Yoav actually go onto Shlomo, but it really means onto the house of David, right? And the Gemara proves how each one of the curses happens to a descendant of David, which is just very, very tragic. And the Gemara tells us from this story, it's better to be cursed and not to be the one who curses, because as you can see, the person who cursed ended up being cursed. So I guess it's saying, accept the curses so that you do not suffer in the long run. So the Gemara continues on Daf 49. The Sanhedrin asks Yoav, why did you kill Avner? Again, Yoav kills Avner. So the question is, why? He says that he was avenging his brother's death. Right? His brother Avner killed Yoav's brother Asael, and therefore Yoav wants to kill Avner because Avner killed Yoav's brother. The Gemara says, but wait, he was trying. Asael was trying to kill Avner. He was running after him, so Avner is allowed to kill somebody who's trying to kill him. So the Gemara says, well, maybe he shouldn't have killed him, or sorry, Yoav says, right? Or the court says, Yoav says, you shouldn't have killed my brother. right? You should have just like wounded him. Why did you kill him? Right? Just stop him. So he says, like, I didn't have good aim and I couldn't just stop him, and therefore I had to kill him. So Bnayahu accepts that that Yoav is not liable for killing Avner. What about Amasa? Right? What about Amasa? So it says, well, he killed him because he was a traitor to the crown, because he didn't listen to David. Right? A verse in Yoshua teaches that if you don't listen to the king, you're liable for death. But not if it goes against the Torah. Therefore, Amasa thought that because the people were learning Torah, he would let them learn Torah, and then he would gather them for war. Or maybe Yoav deserved to die because he backed Adoniah instead of backing Shlomo. Or the Gemara gives another reason. Yoav, right? The Gemara says, "Wait a minute, what are you talking about?" Yoav was devoted to David, and there's no way that he deserved to die because of that. Rather, right? Yoav fought a war, and David learned Torah. They needed each other. They were like a great pair. And rather, Avner deserved to die because of a pit. The Gemara says because of like a water pitcher that David took from Shaul's camp, and because of a thorn. And this is the story of David and Shaul in the cave, where Avner suggests, oh, David didn't really tear your cloak. It must have been caught on a thorn, right? And therefore, right, Shlomo says that Amasa and Avner were greater than Yoav. They were more learned, and really they shouldn't have been killed. And therefore Yoav deserved to be killed. This is the end of the 6th chapter, and now we are going to begin the 7th chapter of this Masachet. So we said that, so the Mishnah teaches us there are 4 types of capital punishment. Skila, which is stoning, Sreifa, which is burning, Hereg, which is beheading, and Chenek, which is strangulation. So this seems to be the order of severity, meaning stoning, burning, beheading, strangulation. Another option is that the order is burning, stoning, strangulation, beheading. So now the Gemara explains. So again, we're going to get into a long discussion of how do you know which one is more stringent. Now, it is not what you would think, right? One would think, oh, this hurts more or this takes more time. That is not what the Gemara is going to answer. The Gemara is going to answer based on the verses in the Torah and who gets what punishment. That's how we're going to determine which one is more stringent. So the Gemara says that when Chazal make a list, it's in no specific order, meaning that when our Mishnah gave an order, it's not necessarily about severity. The only list that is about a certain order are the 7 cleaning agents. I'm not sure if we've seen that before, but the Gemara talks about 7 cleaning agents in order to see if something is really, let's say, blood or something like that. And there are 7 cleaning agents. They have to be used in a very specific order. The Gemara says no. Also, the list of deaths, which is our Mishnah, it is in the order of severity. Also, the order of the temple service on Yom Kippur, right? It has to be done in a certain order. Also, the sequence of the Korban Tamid, the daily sacrifice. Also, the ritual of Chalitza and the putting on the clothing of the priest. All of these things must be done in a certain order. Okay, skila, again, which is stoning, is the most severe because it's the punishment for a blasphemer and an idolater. these people attack fundamentals of faith. Therefore, it must be that stoning is the most severe. Sreifa, right, or another opinion is that burning, sreifa, is the most stringent because it's the punishment for a daughter of a kohen, of a priest, who commits adultery, right? She profanes her father, and Daf 50 tells us, since she's betrothed, she gets skila, she gets stoning. If she's married, she gets burning. And here, this proves that stoning is actually more stringent because the punishment for a betrothed should be more stringent than the punishment of a married woman. Again, don't forget, betrothed doesn't mean regular engagement. It means the first step of marriage. Now the Gemara is going to go like back and forth, so you might get a little dizzy. But the Gemara says, again, we said stoning is the most severe. And then we said maybe burning is the most severe. Now the Gemara says maybe beheading is the most severe because maybe it's more stringent than stoning because it's given to an ir nidachat, again, the city that committed idolatry, where you even destroy property. We say, no, the power of the subverter is stronger, right? And therefore, he gets a more stringent punishment. Therefore, stoning, right, becomes, is seen as more stringent than beheading. Next, maybe strangling is more stringent because it's the punishment for someone who hits his parents, and that's really terrible. It's compared to the honor of God. We say no. The betrothed girl who is not the daughter of a kohen, if she's the daughter of a regular Jew, if she gets stoning, and a married woman gets strangulation, chenek. So therefore, we see that stoning is more severe. Remember, we said the punishment for the betrothed is more severe. So here we see that stoning is more severe than strangulation. Maybe, we say that burning is more severe than beheading because it's the punishment for the daughter of a kohen. We say, or wait, maybe beheading is worse because it's the punishment for the ir nidachat, for the city. We say no, both burning and stoning mention the word her father, right? She profanes her father. Therefore, both of them are more stringent than beheading. We say that burning is more stringent than strangulation, and beheading is more stringent than strangulation because, again, it's the punishment for the city that does idolatry. Or maybe, sorry if I hope you're not getting too dizzy, but the Gemara feels the need to understand what is the order of severity of each one of these things. Maybe strangulation is more stringent because it's the punishment for hitting parents. We say no, right? Again, attacking faith is always going to be more stringent than attacking parents. Or another opinion, Rabbi Shimon says burning is more stringent than stoning because it's the punishment for the daughter of a kohen, and it's changed from the regular punishment of stoning. So if you're going to change the punishment, it must be that it is more stringent. We see burning is more stringent than strangulation, and again, burning is more stringent than beheading. And then we say we're going to end with the idea that again, stoning is more stringent than beheading or strangulation. Rabbi Shimon says the subverter gets strangulation and the subverted, right, the people who were enticed to worship idolatry get beheaded. Therefore, it shows that strangulation is more stringent. And again, we say that the betrothed daughter of a Kohen who commits adultery gets stoning. Rabbi Shimon says she gets streifa, again, burning, right? Each one is going to say she gets the worst punishment. Either it's burning or stoning. A betrothed girl who is not a bat Kohen, right? She is an regular Israel. If she has relations with her father, she gets stoned. And Rabbi Shimon says she gets burning, right? A married woman gets burnt. And according to Rabbi Shimon, you always get sreifa. You always get the punishment of burning. According to the sages, we said that stoning is more stringent. According to Rabbi Shimon, burning is more stringent. And with that, we are going to end today's class. Don't worry, more death and gruesome capital punishments ahead. If people have squeamish stomachs, this masachet is maybe less for you, but again, I think what's very important is what we said in the beginning, the concept that even though these things are terrible and they are punishments for very terrible things, we do try to make it as humane as possible. So I think that is an interesting point. I see we have a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to hear any questions or comments. Next week, class will be regular time and regular day. Yes.
I'm sorry to backtrack, but I did miss about you started saying by Mikla Lomdim Prat, from the generalization to, I missed that part.
There it was talking about, it says that, the question is, does everyone who gets stoned get hanged afterwards? Or maybe it is only the person who blasphemes, right, who curses God or worships idolatry, maybe only those two people get hanged after they get stoned. So the question is, based on the way you interpret the verses, is it that there's a generalization and then a specification, and then only those two types of sins get both, kind of the stoning and the hanging? Or do we say, no, is it used in a more general understanding, and therefore anybody who gets stoned is also going to get hanged as well?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, well, wishing everyone, yeah, wait. Mommy, we can't hear you. Are you mute? Oh, now I can hear you. What?
The person who gets stoned, is he dead and then they hang him?
Yes. Meaning?
What, for display?
No, no, actually, meaning he is, because of the pasuk, right? Because of the verse seems to say that if you're stoned, you also have to get hanged, I guess, on display, but display not for the next week, display for that minute, right?
No,
so
I
that
don't hear you.
Oh, wait, you can't hear me? You can't hear me?
I hear you now.
Oh, maybe put your earphones back in.
I guess for her to hear you, she needs the earphones and
Yeah.
for her to speak.
Let's see. Wait, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Because the verse says that the person who's stoned needs to get hanged, so I guess you're right that it is so that people can see, but it's only for a minute. So the idea is that, I guess you're right, that people should see what happens to someone who curses God, but they're taken down right away and they're already dead. So yeah.
I saw that Ilanita wrote forensic chemical solutions.
Okay.
That's like Srefa.
Thank you.
That what?
That's like Srefa, right?
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, Zohar. Yeah, it's not important. I was just following along in stream of consciousness while you you mentioned something about various processes and solutions that were actually applied to determine if blood was present and things like that. It just made me think, so that I wrote like forensic chemical solutions used today. It just made me think of those things. We have specific solutions to determine specific things, and we do it in a specific order. So everything
Exactly.
new is old again, everything old is new again. Nothing new under the sun.
Exactly. Right, there's this idea, and the way the Gemara describes how you do exactly in that way, the way you like determine these stains is you have to follow the step by step from 1 to 7, and that determines if it's blood or different things depending on what we're doing. So yes, it is like that, like a forensic science. All right, wishing everyone a Shavua Tov, Shabbat Shalom, and see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.